If anybody wants to buy my seat, I'm willing to sell it. Well, thank all of you for attending. I had a couple questions prior to the session, and one was, will this be relevant to post-secondary? And my response to that is, I believe it absolutely is relevant. As an adjunct professor for the University of Montana as well as the University of Wyoming, these are tools that I require of all of my pre-service teachers. Additionally, these are concepts that I require all my K-12 students and my post-secondary students be versed in. So I do feel like it's relevant. If you didn't get a chance to fill out the survey, that's okay. We wanted to kind of I kind of wanted to get a sense of the audience and, you know, what where you were at with one-to-one, if you allow smartphones in your school, if you're a K-12, and if you're a Google school. So if you didn't get a chance to fill this out, it's absolutely okay. There's three big concepts that we're going to try to focus on, and I'll tell you right now, I'm really out of my comfort zone here. I typically have an iPad strapped to my hand and working in small groups at tables, so I'll try to stay focused and stay behind the microphone, but it really puts me out of my comfort zone. The three focus areas that we're going to address today are collaborative content. One of the things, I ran a Moodle server for several years. I had a fabulous Moodle trainer, Randy Orwin here, when he was in Seattle, Washington. And so I was pretty versed in learning management systems. When I came to Teton County Schools, they were looking for a learning management system, and we searched for about 4 months and landed on Canvas. One of the pieces that I absolutely love about the Canvas learning management system is how dynamic it is with the Google tools. I am a very passionate Google tool trainer. I've trained about 700 teachers across the Northwest and presented at many technology conferences around the Google concepts. And the ability to be completely collaborative and in generating student-centered content in my Canvas instance is amazing. In other words, when I speak to that, I'm really referencing I want my students to support me and myself to support them when we're generating content in Canvas. And as all of you are educators, you understand that in the moment you say, oh, that's a great idea. I forgot to put that in my content today. I'll add it when I get back to my desk. And I get back to my desk and I forget to add it. Students need to see this content immediately, and I feel like that we're going to demonstrate some ways that you can do that with Canvas and Google. Also, a guided learning platform. One of the things that I really like about Canvas is how nicely it works with YouTube. We're a GAF school, Google Apps for Education, which means we now have unlimited storage, and I can put gigabytes and terabytes and petabytes of video up, and it doesn't count towards my storage in Canvas. So when I'm putting that content up, if I can generate a YouTube URL out of my YouTube channel, and I paste it into Canvas, it immediately creates my thumbnail for me. So I get this really nice visual appeal with instant access for my students. I'm going to show you a tool that I use called Screencastify that is built into my Chrome browser. And I not only use it, my students use it for presentations. We're also going to talk about understanding student submissions. We adopted Canvas last year. We're just over a year old with our Canvas adoption. And we wanted to be able to have students, since we're a GAF school, submit their assignments from Google. And there are a couple ways to do that, and I wish someone would have shown me some of the ins and outs and the pros and cons of doing that previously. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This presentation is embedded in the Canvas instance that I've created for this session. Okay, you can get there in one of three ways. You can get to our instance here. It's public for all of you to see. You don't have to have an account. I've created a Google shortener and a QR code, so you'll be able to get to that. And this is also going to be linked from the Canvas community. First, let's talk about collaborative content. And I'm going to demonstrate some, and hopefully kind of replicate what happens in my classroom and in the teachers that I train. So I'm going to quickly slip over to the Canvas instance that I've created. Now, when you get to this Canvas instance, you're going to see that my slideshow is embedded in the bottom here. So you can always get back to it. So you don't have to worry about finding this embedded slideshow. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look. Oh, and by the way, if you have a question that we don't get time to answer, I've put a Google form here on the front that you can submit your questions. There's a place for you to include your email, and I will get back to you after the session. Okay. So collaborative content, let's take a look at that first. So first of all, we're going to talk about Google Docs. And when I reference Google Apps, I'm primarily talking about Google Documents, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and Google Draw. And I think all 4 of them are super powerful platforms for learning. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this. Now, I use the option called external URL. I was sitting in a session yesterday, and I heard a gentleman speaking behind me, and he said, man, some of these sessions are so awesome, and they're affirming what we're doing, but I just want to know how. Show me the step-by-step. So one of the things that I've done in this Canvas instance is I have created little video captures of the process that I went through to make these things happen. So this is not about how-to, but the how-tos are included in this course for you when you get back. So the first thing that I want to demonstrate is this is very typical of what I do in my Canvas courses. I might have a weekly or a daily agenda, or maybe I have a brainstorming session and I put my students in groups and I want them to brainstorm around a certain topic and contribute to a collaborative Google Doc. Now, I have Jan Sigerstrom working with me. She's the K-5 instructional coach at Teton Public Schools, and I am the 6-12. So what she's going to do is, you probably noticed, she has this Google Doc on her tablet of choice. She's got an iPad. We are a BYOD school, so I don't want to have to care if you have, a tablet or a smartphone or a computer. I want it to be complete. I want to level the playing field for all of my students. So as she's making changes to this document, it is going to dynamically update. So when I'm working with kids, as we're all collaborating on this document, it is updating my Canvas course for me. So that when I walk out of the classroom, students are already seeing the changes that we made collaboratively. The students that were absent are updated immediately, and I don't have to remember to go back and do it later, right? So I use Google Docs embedded in this fashion all over my Canvas instance. Okay. Sometimes I link from a content page, but oftentimes I use an external URL in modules. Okay. So let's increase the size. Absolutely. Okay. I can increase the size, and then I lose all of my navigation. I'll go back up in a minute, Jan.
Okay.
So the next piece, let me come down just a little bit. The next piece that I want to show you is Google Slides. Now, we use Google Slides for formative assessment. I'm sorry, not slides. I'm going to go to slides, and then I'll go to sheets. Google Slides is one of my favorite tools because it has that PowerPoint environment. I like the idea that when I have a Google Slideshow open, that it's going to dynamically change. If I have 30 kids in the class and I've broken them into small groups, then they can collaborate on one slide. The team leader, I want you to make changes to your slide 5, 6, 7, 8. And the beauty of Google Slides, in my opinion, I taught for years using PowerPoint. And many of you probably had the same dynamic. We're going to do a group project. One person's going to drive, and the rest of you are going to sit behind them. That's collaboration in the old school way. In the new way, they each have their own slide. They can be collaborating synchronously in their slideshow, and it's updating my Canvas instance. So we put together some pictures on our way down here and from the Tetons, and what Jan did is on slide 7, she took a picture of all of you just moments ago from her smartphone. She opened up the Google Slides app, which is one of my requirements from all of my students and teachers, is on your smart devices, doesn't matter the platform, load the app, Google Slides, Google Sheets, Google Docs, and Google Drive. Because then from my phone, I can have kids go out into the field, that just-in-time learning, gathering in-the-moment content and contributing to my Canvas content at a really rich level. So if I move to slide 7,
You might have to refresh.
oh, I do need to refresh, sorry. If I refresh my page, even though I'm not editing my Canvas course, I just refreshed, and I can move to slide 7, and you'll see, did you not?
Yeah,
Did you hit the enter?
Yep.
I know you're getting us slow. It will
It's
eventually
really
catch
slow.
up with her connection, but slide 7 is going to be a picture of all of you. So typical scenario in my classrooms, whether it's post-secondary or high school, is for everybody to have a device of choice, contribute to a slide, based on the content that I'm presenting that day. Dynamically updates my Canvas course, and when I walk out of the classroom, I don't have to go back and email all your pictures to me and I'll put it in the slideshow so it's all there for you. I just became much more efficient in developing classroom content. And students were at the center of that.
Still not in there.
It will.
Okay.
Your phone will
come back.
catch up. So another thing that I use a great deal is Google Sheets. If you've never had a chance to attend a Google Summit, if you're a diehard Google person, it's a must attendance. It is amazing what those guys from California will come and tell you. And one of the things that we do a lot in Teton County is formative assessment. And it's typical to have teachers with an iPad strapped to their hand. I noticed in the year-end expenditures, a lot of them were buying that little strap, so that they can go around in the moment, gathering data, and then it's dynamically updating their Canvas course if they've embedded it, such as what I've done here. So I have 4 people from Teton County in the audience, and they have Google Sheets on their device of choice. I've got a mixture of devices. And so you can see that they're in this sheet dynamically because I can see colored squares around here. I can tell that Lori Clark Erickson's here, Carlos Wiggum's here, so I'm seeing their name. It's showing me that they're active in my document. They're putting, and this is just a sample spreadsheet. Maybe I'm trying to gather data in the moment on their student clubs, the male to female ratio, and how many 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are in that club. So we're going to talk about the data of all of these pieces. So you'll see when Lori Clark Erickson's adding here, notice how as she's adding the data in the gender balance cell, it is updating with a graph. That's called a sparkline graph. It's really a powerful tool in Google Sheets. So as they add their information, it's putting a bar graph here, and over here on the right, it's going to put a trend line graph. So I've just put a function in there. My students are collaborating, they're enhancing my content, and we're able to dynamically fill this Google Sheet in. And then we can have really rich discussions around that, okay? So it's called a sparkline formula, and it's in Google Sheets. And when you come to this course, just so that you know, if you want to know the formula, right up here at the top, see this little comment? Actually, it's right up here, I believe. Right here there's the formula embedded as a comment. So if you want to use something like this, you can grab that formula and do it. Okay? The formula is in that cell and in this cell. The next one that I want to show, and teachers are starting to actually, let's look at Google Forms. So this is the Google form that you filled out. Google Forms I use, when I was at the university level, I was asked what was the #1 tool that you thought every pre-service teacher needed to know, and this was the one I pointed to, Google Forms. Because I use Google Forms for all sorts of things. We use them for walkthroughs, to generate reports, because everything's automated in the backside. It saves me so much time. So with this form, each one of you submitted the form, or many of you did. And I do this often with kids. If we're looking at statistical data, we're trying to gather information, I have them submit that, and what it did here is it dynamically updated this summary of responses, which the thing I love about this, those of you that are Google users, you'll realize that this is automatic. We didn't have to build these, and that's a time saver. So when I look at this tells me a lot about my audience, tells me the institutions. We've got a lot with K-12. Welcome all your K-12 people. It looks like we've got the majority of our people are GAF schools. That's awesome. It looks like one-to-one schools, about 34 out of the total amount there, about 48%. And cell phone use, it looks like we have about 80%, which is awesome. Because one of the things I truly believe in and I'm very passionate about is about 8 years ago, I started using cell phones in the classroom every single day in my class when I was teaching K-12, and even at the post-secondary level, with all sorts of tools, Google and otherwise. Because I feel like it's a super powerful tool, and if we have them using it for our purpose, maybe they aren't using it for an alternative purpose, right? So that is an example of how I embed a Google form into my Canvas instance, and then I link to the summary of results so that my students automatically see the results that were generated. And the final one is Google Draw. You're not connected? That's okay.
Am I showing up there?
Nope, you're not showing up. So this is Google Draw. Google Draw is relatively new to the suite of Google Apps, the Google Apps Productivity Suite. I'm starting to really see the power of this for all sorts of things like brainstorming, for virtual manipulatives for my math teachers. Lots of uses here. There are thousands of templates out there for you to already use. So this would just be an example of something I would do in the classroom where my students could come to this page. And one of the things that I want to point out is when you are working with Google Docs and Google Sheets and all of these different tools embedded, the reason I'm seeing the edit tools is because I'm logged into my Google Drive. My students don't see those edit tools. Okay? If I've shared the document with them, they do see those edit tools. So I think those are really important pieces when you're rolling out something like this. And you can see that Jan is down here in the bottom section under Google Drive, and she's typing in there dynamically. Okay, so she's contributing content to this. And again, this would be very typical of what I would do with classroom teachers or students or during PD opportunities. Okay, the embedding of Google Draw. One of the things that I've included in here, one of our big ahas, and it continues to be kind of an aha for us, is when you're training teachers to use Google with Canvas, don't underemphasize their understanding of share permissions. Okay, they need to know that if they link a Google Doc from their Canvas course and they have parents as observers, their parents don't have GAF accounts. They will not be able to see it. So it's essential. And this sheet right here is a step-by-step of how you set those. It's also down here, this table that says, when I say can view, what can they do with my document? So this is a nice little grid that shares out with you. This is what will happen if you use this share permission. And really consider your audience. If you have parents observing in your courses, you need to say anyone with a link can view. Now the power of that is they can't search on Google for it because you haven't made it public. You've said anyone with a link can view. Therefore, when they get into your Canvas course via their password, they can get to the link and they can see it. Okay, so it still has that layer of protection if that's a concern for you. The next piece, and I have, and I go ahead and just load this up. Give it a minute to load. Another one of the things that I like is when you are linking in any of these tools in Canvas, if there is a problem and it doesn't load correctly, all they have to do is click right here on the heading and it will load in a new tab for them and they can see this full version. This is the step-by-step out of a Canvas guide of how to link an external URL, okay? And the way that you would do that with Google. The next piece that I wanted to talk about is this use of Google YouTube account. So I have a Google channel, a YouTube channel, and on that channel I am always publishing video to guide student learning. One of the things you're going to notice, and you can't see it in this one because this is not my computer, but I put an extension in my browser called Screencastify. Couple reasons why I like Screencastify. Screencastify is like a lot of the screencasting tools, but it's embedded in my browser. It allows for picture-in-picture. So for example, if I have 5 students gone and they need to finish their Google presentation, they've done a Google slide, I have them load Screencastify into their browser, give their presentation, it puts a picture of them in the bottom right corner, it narrates their presentation, they can then submit this on their Canvas course, and then it provides this platform for real rich dialogue and peer reviews. Okay, so using the Screencastify tool is fabulous. I have included a video on my Canvas course on how to do that. Okay, so you can get back to that. But the beauty of that is it loads into my YouTube channel and saves a copy in my Google Drive automatically. So when I go grab that URL out of my YouTube channel and paste it into my content page, it immediately creates my thumbnail. That's easy, I feel. I don't have to go find embed code. I don't have to do any of that. So that collaborative nature between Canvas and Google, I feel, is super powerful. The next piece, I'll go ahead and transition on here, is that grading piece. What we have found at Teton Public Schools is that there's really 2 solid ways to have kids submit Google Docs, Sheets, and slides. as assignment submissions. One is with the URL, and the other one is by registering their Google account with Canvas. In our opinion, the pros and cons of that, and I've basically put together a screencast video here of, as far as an instructor, the grading lens, this is how it would look if you were grading, if the student submitted it via a URL. The one thing my teachers like about this way of submitting assignments is they can watch their learning. So for example, I have a middle school teacher, she sets the assignment up, and as part of the introduction to the assignment, she has all of her kids go create a Google Doc, name it, share it with the teacher, and submit the URL before they've started the project. That's step one. Now it's in her Canvas course, and as they progress through the project, she has this timeline and she has this progression of learning that she can monitor. The downside is when she goes to grade those, she has to flip back and forth, toggle back and forth between her Canvas account. She has to choose where she wants to make the comments, either in the Google Doc or in her Canvas instance, and then go back and look at the Google slideshow. So from a teacher lens, it's a little bit clunky, right? Now, the other way is to have them submit it using the Google Drive app. The thing I like about that platform is if I submit or have a student submit a rough draft, it's like it takes a picture of it. It freezes it in time. If they make changes in their Google Drive, it does not change the one they submitted to me as a rough draft. Then I have Crocodoc embedded right in my Canvas where I can make all my highlights, I can do all my reviewing right there in Canvas. That's super efficient for me. For the student, they need to look at your comments in Canvas and then go make their changes in Google Drive, right? And then also submit it a second time, which freezes it as their final copy. So you just kind of have to work through the dynamics of that and figure out what works best for the individual teacher. I don't believe there's a right or wrong way there. It's just what works best for you. Okay, so I think that's super powerful. Yes?
When you're talking about submitting, is there any, I'm brand new to Canvas.
Yeah.
But we use for Google School,
Mm-hmm.
and we also use Google Classroom.
Okay.
Is there any connection with that when you're talking about submitting?
Yeah. Her question is, she uses Google Classroom, and so then where is the distinction there? Now, a couple things that I will tell you. We use Google Classroom. Some of my teachers do. One of the reasons we use Google Classroom is, and I don't believe Google Classroom is not a true LMS, but it's a fabulous platform for monitoring projects, right? So and especially if you have cross-classroom projects, our students are generated into our Canvas instance via PowerSchool. So if I'm working with another class, there's no way from our two classes to collaborate, right? So in that, we use Google Classroom. I have a second grade teacher that's using Google Classroom and loves it. We're actually thinking about, well, maybe K2 is a nice lead-in with Classroom, but then I have some high school teachers. Our librarian from the high school uses it in an amazing way when she's collaborating with other teachers, but it still requires, if you want to do your grading in Canvas, to go get that grade out of Google Classroom and put it into Canvas. So that double entry, yeah. Yep, it absolutely is. And especially if you're using that, like we're using the syncing. So when we use the gradebook in Canvas, we have it pushed directly to PowerSchool, right? So we're using that push, and that's super efficient for the teachers. It's a good question. Yeah, you're welcome. The next thing I want to share, let me let this switch over. This is the grading lens. I have created a screencastify for you here, the grading lens of how to submit via the Google Doc when you register it. And in this shows, you can see the Crocodoc highlights in here. This is what it would look like if you actually had them submit it that alternate, the second way that I referenced. So you can take a look at that. The final piece, because I see that I have 5 minutes left. The final piece, and I'm going to skip down here, and like I said, all this stuff is contained in that instance, is we wanted to share with you lessons learned with Canvas and Google integration. So here's some things that we learned. Again, just to reemphasize, don't underestimate the importance of sharing. Make sure your teachers understand sharing rights. Make sure your students understand sharing, okay? And it'll go much more smoothly for you. Don't make assumptions that your teachers know the Google tools, because at least when I surveyed a lot of the teachers, they said, oh yeah, I've been using the Google tools for 4 or 5 years. And then I said, oh, awesome, how are you using them? Well, I use Gmail and I use Google Search. And then, and that's an easy mistake to make. You really need to make them understand, no, this is Google Apps. This is similar to the productivity suite of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and then start talking about the differences and how this is a cloud-based option. So really make sure you emphasize that. Make sure you provide specific training on embedding. Now, that can be face-to-face training, or that can be just putting together screencasts and such for embedding. Embedding is very easy. It's a little daunting for some at first, but then when they get comfortable with it, it's a pretty easy option. Make sure that you continuously model the dynamic nature of Canvas and Google, like Jan and I were doing. She was contributing to content so that you could see this is what it looks like in the classroom. Model that. When you're in PD, put together a Google Draw and have your teachers get into groups, and then have them contribute, have them watch what happens in Canvas. What I tell my teachers is Canvas should be your launching page. One of the things you need to do is market your Canvas course. Every student, every parent should know how to get to it seamlessly. Okay, so if that means every day when I start my lesson, Canvas is open. Oh, that handout that I've got for you right here in Canvas. So you're continually modeling that for your kiddos. So I feel like that's a really important thing to remember. One of the things that we did is when I came to Teton Schools, I'd been using the Google tools for about 7 years. And initially it was, we're not a Google school, we don't use Google, we're not going to use Google. Within about a year, and teachers were so jazzed about it, they were excited about using Google. But we were adopting Canvas at the same time. And one of the things one of the teachers said, you need to tell teachers about putting Google content in. Because if they upload all their files from our network drive as traditional files, and every time they make a change to that file, they have to change it and upload it again. And they say, why didn't you show me this 6 months ago? It would have been super easy for me to maintain my Canvas courses. So what I would recommend is that you, at least 3 to 6 months out, if you're not a GAF school, make sure you do some training with your staff so that they understand that if they're going to use these tools as an embedded option in Canvas. The other thing is dual login. When our students set up when they get logged in through Active Directory, that logs them into Canvas, it logs them into their email, to their Google account, there's 4 items, and to the local computers in our district. So we wanted that all syncing so that they had the same password for all 4 accounts. If they want to reset it, they reset it for one, it resets them for all. It does not. I wish it did. We do not have that one figured out yet, but we're working on it. Also, create orientation models. One of the biggest complaints I hear from teachers is, this is all great, but I get a new student and I have to teach Canvas and Google and how to get into their email because we've not yet adopted Gmail. We're using our Outlook email with our GAF account, but we're pushing hard on that. But the point is, a new student comes in, and that's really time consuming to get that kiddo up to speed and not take time away from your other students. So create some orientation models. Embed those in your Canvas courses. Every single teacher should have an orientation module set up so that new kids come, here, sit down and watch this or go through this orientation module, then come back and talk to me. Come back with those really high-end questions. And then finally, and this has been said numerous times throughout the conference, but when you provide PD, provide it through your Canvas instance. Make sure you're using Canvas so that the teachers can see the student side of that, okay? I can see that I am completely out of time, but we'll take any final questions that you might have. Yeah?
So even if I'm not in a GAF school, I have access to all these apps through Canvas right now, right?
Yeah, you absolutely do. The only distinction is that GAF teachers, GAF students have unlimited storage with Google. There's also built-in security if you're a GAF school. But with your free account, I operated with my free account for 7 years. So absolutely, yes.
With your Google Doc, it looks like you said you put the URL in. Is there a reason you did the URL instead of an embed code?
Not really, just because it's so easy. I would have used the embed code if the URL would have taken me outside of Canvas, but the external URL keeps me right in Canvas, and it's just easier, I feel. You're welcome.